So we're doing the 2015 AP Computer Science test, question 4A. This question involves the design of an interface, writing a class that implements the interface, and writing a method that uses that interface. So questions part A tells us a number group represents a group of integers defined in some way. What we have to do is write an interface called NumberGroup that represents a group of integers. The interface should have a single contains method, so a method is called contains. That determines if a given integer is in the group. For example, if group 1 contains, it tells you what it does. Basically, contains or not. So write the complete number group interface. So all this, if you know what an interface is, you know interface doesn't have any code in it. So all this stuff you can ignore. All we need to do is write an interface. So all we need is the method signature for the contains and the interface itself. So for 4A, it's pretty straightforward. What we're going to do is, I've already put some test stuff in there. So I'm just going to say new, it's called number group. It's not a class, it's an interface, and that's going to generate, public interface number group. And that's it. All I need is now one method, which was called contains, and it's gonna, this method contains, we can see it takes as an argument an integer, and it returns, so it tells you true or false, so it returns a boolean. So it's going to be public boolean, it returns a boolean, contains, takes as an argument an integer, we're going to call it number. Done. So this is the answer to A. That's pretty straightforward. So you see, all this stuff is going to be important in part B, which we're going to do now. So a range, they tell us, which is a new class. We have to write this range class, which is a number group. So that tells you that a range is going to implement the number group interface. That's Java implements. So it's going to do that, and then a range is basically has a low bound and an upper bound. It has two integers. One is the smallest number in the range, and the other one is the biggest number in the range. They're both integers, and so that means that it contains all the integers in between those two numbers, inclusive, right? -3 and -2 represent the range between -3 and -2, includes -3 and 2, and all the integers in between. It's pretty straightforward. So we have to implement this range class, include all the necessary instance variables and methods, as well as a constructor that takes two int parameters. They're talking, of course, about this guy right here. They're already giving us the constructor signature. And the first parameter represents the minimum value, and the second is the maximum value, as you can probably guess, -3, 2. Okay, so that's it. What they want you to do is implement this range class. Again, so I'm going to say new Java class. It's called a range, and this time it is a class. And they want us to implement number group, right? So that's a key thing. So how do we implement this range, right? Hopefully it's pretty obvious, right? All you need to do is, you don't need to store all the integers, right? All you need to do is store the smaller number and the bigger number. And if I know the smaller number and know the bigger number, I can generate all the numbers in between, right? Because I can count. I'm good at that. I can count from the minimum to the maximum. I have for loops. So I don't need to store all this. I just need to store those two values. And they're given to me in the constructor. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the private, I'm going to call it the min value, forgot, int, and then private int max value. Right? And then I'm going to need my constructor, which is going to use both of those. But you see, it's pretty straightforward. The constructors, you're going to take the min value and max value and store those. That's it. Now, the tricky part of this question is that they want you to remember. They don't tell you explicitly, but they do, They tell you that there's a number group, so they want you to implement number group interface. So the moment you implement a number group interface, that means you have to implement all the methods in number group, in which this case contains method. So we got to implement the contains method. We can just implement the missing method right there, contains. So I'm just gonna do that. Public boolean contains a number. Of course, that doesn't work. You can't return false. Now we have to think. So how do we determine if this number is in the range of min value and max value? Well, basically, number has to be in between, right? It has to be bigger than and less than or equal to the max value. And min value. So you wish you could do that, but so number has to be between these two values. That makes perfect sense to us, but that's not legal Java syntax. So we have to be a little more verbose. So we have to say like that. We have to say that the number is bigger than or equal to, equal is key, right? Remember, these are inclusive. So number is bigger than or equal to the min value, and the number is less than or equal to the max value. And that's it. Let's test it out. So now, okay, these things work now. I can just run that, and you see this is the same example from the test, the range between -3 and 2, and I'm just doing some tests. So -5 and 7 should not be there, so I get false, false, and 0, -3, and 2 are all there, so true, true, true. So there it is.